Hello, everybody, and welcome back to First Ring Daily, where our national nightmare is over and Microsoft has finally come forward and given us some clarity about something we've been waiting for, well, at least since October. We now know when the Surface Go LTE is going to launch.
Wow. Nicely done.
Yeah, did I
was
say anything
really
incorrect?
Curious
Yep.
how you were going there. Yeah, so now you can be more connected with that PC you know what you should buy anyway. So that's great.
Wow, I don't know if I would agree with that, but here it is, starting at the very smitten price of $679 for that thing with LTE connectivity, which is not cheap.
Yeah. What's that, about 120, 130 more than the non-LTE version, something like that?
Yeah, I was just kind of hoping that they were going to offer that entry level, like $399 one with
Sure.
the LTE, but they are they're
It's
not.
not really an always connected PC unless it's, I don't know, always connected. just a thought.
I mean, you do bring up a peculiar point that that those fine details of connectivity do matter in an always connected world.
I'd like the occasionally connected version. Could I save money by being occasionally connected?
Actually, yes, you can, Paul. You can save around $100 to save to be occasionally connected, and that's about it.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
All right. The interesting thing that actually did happen this weekend is Microsoft had an event in Mexico City, which they called XO18, and they announced a bunch of deals and things like PUBG is coming to Xbox Game Pass and other things. But to me, the only one that matters is that they're knocking $100 off the Xbox One X for Black Friday.
Yep. That's an incredible price for that. That's good.
Yeah.
They're in an interesting spot. I'm going to write a premium post about this. I don't want to give away the entire premise, but we've talked a lot about Microsoft is transitioning Xbox toward this kind of services future. They're uniquely positioned for that, of course. This event was very heavily kind of Xbox Game Pass. Phil Spencer talked a bit separately from the keynote about how they need to do more for PCs, and they're working on that. But I think there's a lot of stuff going into this that it's what I just said is a little simplistic, because Microsoft actually has other strengths that I think make this future more compelling. But it's interesting to me that that like they are going to lose this generation of consoles. There's no doubt about it. That means they're going to be 0 for 3. This one was a particularly bad loss because they did so well in the previous generation. And I don't know, looked at through the lens of history, we may look back and just see this as kind of a non-event because it's all about to change. And you don't get to say it a lot. When Microsoft fell apart in mobile, there was really kind of no fallback there.
Right.
And this is a different story. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely at least see how Microsoft, I think recovers the wrong word, but push forward, I think, is the way to look at this. And they're second place in basically a 2-horse race. Nintendo's kind of out there on their own little island, which is good for them. But
it actually, for what it's worth, everything they've done for people, for gamers, since it became very clear they were going to lose and lose badly, has been just so pro and user centric. It's just wonderful. If you are a gamer, to be on the Xbox platform. I mean, there's so much stuff going on that's so awesome. And like you said, $400 now for the 4K console that a year ago at $500 was still better than the PlayStation 4 Pro. They've made it really compelling. I don't think they're not going to win all of a sudden. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, for the people who really care about the platform and want to be part of it, it's kind of an awesome time to be an Xbox fan.
Yeah, no, I think the future is bright, and there's going to be some good stuff coming in 2019, and there's a book you can read that will have some of that in it.
Yep. Yep, there is.
What else? So they announced keyboard and mouse coming to more games and stuff and whatnot. Surprisingly, they're bringing it to Fortnite, which, I guess that's up to the developer, which is going to be interesting on the console because it's going to create a rift between the peasants and the pros.
I hope that they do special playlists for keyboard mouse. It's going to be a disaster otherwise. I assume. Although, who knows? Consoles have been controller centric for so long. I don't know. I don't know how that changes the way those games are developed. Obviously in the PC it's a huge problem, but PC games have been made forever to support keyboard, mouse, and then controllers as well. I don't know. Well, that seems like a curious choice.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, though, I think it's definitely going to be in the minority, right? There's going to be the people who want the best advantage, and they're going to go ahead and do it. But I still think the majority of people on consoles are still going to be controller, no matter what.
Yeah, but again, if it becomes obvious that keyboard and mouse is
sure, I agree.
Advantage. I mean, my son, who was is a young guy and loves to game and is will do everything up to and including cheating if he has to win, because that's all that matters to him. Would hear this and say, "Yep, I'm going to play this on the Xbox."
Sure.
If it was, that kind of advantage. So I don't know, we'll see. That's interesting.
Paul, is there anything that we do during, I don't know, the same hour every day?
Yeah, you mean like when we record a podcast and then suddenly the people we work with wake up and decide they need to ping us right now?
Yeah, but this one's worse. My wife is texting me now. My dog needs dog food, and she's texting me pictures of the bag saying, "Hey," which...
You should text her a picture of me on the screen in front of you and say, as if to say, "This is what I'm doing now."
That's exactly what I did.
That's
exactly what I did. Such is my life. She has the day off because it's Veterans Day, even though nobody else does, including us. Even my daughter has school, but she somehow doesn't have work.
Actually, even my daughter has school, although they had a 3-hour delay. So she was off for 5 days and 3 hours. I don't know.
It's a nice spring break and
in early November. Yeah, I don't know.
It'll be interesting when she comes home with a cough, and then you wonder.
Yeah, exactly. And black lung, like she lived in England in the 1600s or 1200s or whatever that was.
Other things. So, Paul, word on the street, and by word on the street, I mean you just posted it, is that you finally got to play with your MacBook Air. And how is it?
Yes, it's nice. It's a really nice computer. I mean, I kind of sweated over this one because, being who I am and knowing what's going on with chips and everything, I was really nervous about the processor. And, finally I was like, whatever. I can obviously return this thing if it doesn't work out. But I really need a more modern Mac. And I had tried to I did buy a MacBook Pro last year. I couldn't deal with it. It was just the keyboard and the price, So this one's not inexpensive, but it's not as expensive as a MacBook Pro. And it seems like I'm not going to be, I don't know, I'm not doing power user tasks on this thing. If I ever use it, it's going to be, for writing and looking at the Apple stuff, so it's probably going to be fine. The small MacBook 12 inches is just too tiny for me. But you know what? I was always a big fan of the MacBook Air. Obviously, they're competing against a completely different generation of devices now on the PC side. Things have improved dramatically. There is no doubt that the Surface Laptop 2 is a much better deal than this computer. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And yet, it's really thin. It's really light. It's even smaller than the Surface Laptop 2. The performance is fine. For those everyday tasks, word processing, web browsing, email, whatever. It's nice. I think this is going to satisfy a need. So I think for all the complaining, like now with the performance thing is kind of out of the way, at least in my head, I think this does fit into the same slot that the MacBook Air did before for Apple. It's between the low-end MacBook and the MacBook Pro in virtually every way imaginable, except curiously priced, but I think they'll fix that. It's nice. And the other thing, I think I left this in. I did, yeah. Obviously, whenever I write something like this, it's going to generate a certain amount of trolling. People who just can't stand Apple or whatever. And there was some of that, of course. But actually, there was more. There were a lot more what I would call thoughtful comments than I would have expected, and I kind of appreciate that because I kind of go into this clenched, knowing. You can't write about anything these days without some partisan baloney. I'll write something about a a battery saver feature in Android, and then there's like 13 comments from people you should just get an iPhone. It's just like completely useless information, So
No
anyway,
idea what you're talking about, but yeah.
Yeah. You didn't see that. I don't know. It's too bad that that's the commentary today. Because it's not just the tech world, right? It's the whole thing. And I think about I don't know if I ever discussed this, but I use the Google feed and I talk about the Google feed a lot. I like it. It's one of those things I really like about Android. It's right off the side of the home screen. You could get it on iOS. You just have to run the Google app. The problem, though, it's funny how this is a microcosm for everything that's wrong with all things digital these days, which is that over time I'll see something in there. It will be like I like to read stories about Boston sports, maybe, right? So some story will pop up and it will be about a guy from Milwaukee or something. I don't really, no offense to Milwaukee, I don't really care about the Milwaukee team or their players or whatever, and so you can go in there and say, well, I'm not really interested in this kind of story, or I'll start, like a new Halloween movie came out recently, right? Which, by the way, is freaking terrible. It's an awful movie. There's a whole narrative around how awesome this thing is, and it's terrible. But being interested in scary movies and in Halloween in particular, at one point I was like, I read a few of these things. My feed is now the most ridiculous assortment of content that is a terrible explanation of who I am as a person. It's
Are you sure?
Yeah, I hope so, because it's full of Star Wars stuff and Halloween stuff, Boston Red Sox stuff, which is okay, There's a lot of device and personal electronic type stuff in there, but it's not. It's ceased to be what it was, which was just a general feed of things that are going on in the world, to being hyper specific to some of my weirder, lesser kind of affectations or something, and now it's this really warped view of the world. And it's and that's, when we allow that to happen to ourselves, any news feed, if you're on Facebook and you're I don't want to see stuff like this. I don't want to see stuff like this.
Right.
I don't want to see stuff like this. Or if you have a news aggregation thing, you're I don't want to see that viewpoint. After a while, you're just flooded by like-minded crap. And it's, I'm sorry, but that's actually really unhealthy. And
my favorite thing is, so Paul, how many, it was 7-8 weeks ago about a bed. All the ads I see online are, here's a mattress.
For bed, yeah, right.
I need a button that says, I bought that crap, and stop showing it to me.
I told you the sneaker one, right, or the shoe thing, where a month or so ago I wear New Balance sneakers and shoes because they come in widths. They're really comfortable. I have wide feet. A month ago, or more than a month ago, whenever it was now, I wanted to buy the exact one I had before, which they don't make anymore. But they still have some left, right? So they have really small sizes and really large sizes. I'm like, it's too bad. There isn't a newer version of it. I like it because it's a slip-on shoe. You don't have to tie the laces.
You and my daughter have many things in common.
Well, no, it's not the tying of the laces. It's the fact that everything I wear that has laces, the laces come undone as I'm walking around. It's kind of aggravating. So anyway, I sucked it up and I bought 2 new shoes. Both had laces. I'm like, well, whatever. There's nothing I can do about this. Then a month went by, or a month and a half, or whatever it was. And it was the day of the election. At the day of the election, I went to CNN.com and just kind of see what was going on. Scrolling down the page, there was nothing going on. It's like a Sunday before the football game actually happens. They just talk.
Yeah.
There's nothing to talk about, but here's all the stories. I scroll down the page. There's tech stories and science stories and blah, 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 whatever it is. And then over on the right, there's the thing that looks like a story, but it's a picture of that shoe I tried to buy. And I'm like, okay. I didn't Google search the shoe. I just went to the New Balance website. But I'm like, I know that's there because I tried to buy this thing. So I'm like, screw it. I'm going to click on this and see what it does. And it just went to the New Balance website. It went to the same thing I'd seen weeks earlier. It's the shoe I can't buy because it's only available in size 7 and size 15. But it's out there. It's attached to me now. I did this thing, and there are trackers that cross sites. And now Google knows something about me. It knows I like Halloween movies, and it knows I like New Balance shoes. That's Paul.
In a nutshell.
It's graph of Paul. It's this should bother people. It bothers me.
Yeah, you actually just reminded me, and I started looking up shoes too, because I've bought the same pair of boat shoes for, I don't know, 3 years. They're gray, and they're boat shoes, and they're made by Steve Madden. They're called I never even realized this. It's probably go Gamion, but it's spelled game on.
Okay.
And I cannot find them anymore. And as soon as if they stop making these, I'm going to have a life crisis about having to try to find.
This happens to me all the time.
I told my wife that if she ever finds them online anywhere, to buy about 10 pairs, and I will wear the same pair for the next decade. But
yeah, if I had known, I would have bought at least a couple pairs of that shoe because I really like it. And you go through security, for example. It's nice. At the airport, you just take off your shoe. You don't have to untie and kneel down and tie, and it's simple.
Yeah, it is simple and it's nice.
And I don't get to have it anymore
because
I don't get to have nice things. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I got to look and find new shoes.
I go to New Balance because whatever you buy, they're going to discontinue in 9 months.
Oh, maybe literally on Amazon. This is a wonderful show, by the way. Wow. Oh, they do have them in 10. I wonder. Oh, but they're $50. It's probably because they're limited supply. People know that they're a hot commodity now.
I don't have this anymore, but for many years I always had at least one extra set of whatever the Microsoft ergonomic keyboard and mouse thing was, like in a box just waiting. So whenever this dies, I'll buy 2 of them, but I usually have one waiting. Because you get that thing where I don't drink Coke, but you can kind of imagine you spill a Coke on it and you try to click the key and it doesn't do anything. And I have to write today. Yeah.
Yep. Well, they do. This website has 2 pairs of them left in stock, and I'm tempted to blow $100 on.
I recommend it. You really like them.
There's no question about it. I've worn the same pair for 3 to 5 years, something like that.
It sounds like you should buy them.
When my wife gets home, I will tell her it's Paul's fault.
Okay. You can just play her the clip where I recommended it. Click the button. Click it.
Well, she already knows we're doing a podcast, so she knows I've talked to you today as she hunts down dog food for my dog. You got anything else for this very weird Monday?
No, I spent yesterday in the car, and I'm still, I'm going to be tired today. I'm going to spend the afternoon working on your book, by the way. I'm going to see how much I can get done on that.
Harass you about that because we are...
Yeah, we're good. I know.
Yeah.
I've literally worked on it every day.
No, you have. And I rib Paul publicly because it's fun, but he has been editing it. I think you've got you're on 18 now out of 26.
Something like that.
Something like
it's getting there. It's getting there.
Yeah, I can tell you that the chapters you're coming up on are shorter than the previous chapters, I believe.
That is music to my ears.
Trust me, every time I open the folder with these things in it, I get a little... this book is going to ship, and I'm just going to pray that there's no grammatical errors so I can just drink heavily and never have to look at it again. Because
like I said, I need to make a second pass. I'm definitely going to do that. That will go much quicker, for no doubt about that. But...
Yep.
It's funny. I was making fun of you, because you're like, I wrote you. I'm like, you wrote one book and it's 150 pages long. I'm really impressed. But the truth is, I've written tons of books, and it's a slog getting through this. The editing, I don't know that I ever appreciated editors in the slightest.
Sure.
In fact, I'm pretty sure I never did.
Yeah.
But
yep.
It's hard.
It's interesting too, and I was going to do this in a later post or whatever, but I can tell. For the most part, I can't really tell where you edited, which is a good sign. But there's one.
I'm not trying to change.
No. There's one specific grammatical change that you make, and it's your writing style versus my writing style.
What is it?
It's you will make short sentence. So I use a semicolon if I have what I consider in my head a half a thought.
Yep.
And you will change that to a full sentence, which both are technically right, but that's just our different writing styles, and that is the only thing I've seen you change. But
yeah, that's something that was beaten into me because I actually write like you do, in very long, what I would call complex sentences like that.
That's exactly what it is.
I'm not sure what the right term is for it, but I have learned to break those up into shorter, more digestible bites where it makes sense. And it was actually an editor who did this to me. It's chop, chop, chop. It's when you kind of read the 2 versions, you're like, okay. I think it's possible sometimes with a longer sentence for people to kind of get lost in the thread. And I still do this. I use the dashes sometimes to separate part of a sentence, or you can use parentheses. Obviously, you can use a semicolon. It is. It's funny. It's funny that you think of it as a style of mine, because the truth is I struggle with it every single day. Like
Yeah.
This is one of those things where it's easier to say than it is to do, or it's easier
Sure.
to give advice. Like reading your stuff, it's very easy
Yeah.
to chop it up into, smaller things. But I'll reread some of my own stuff, and I go back and I'm like, oh no, I gotta, chop that, chop that. So that's interesting. Yeah.
I was talking with my wife about it, and I mean, either one is right. I don't think there's a yes or no. And then she goes, well, did you ever think of it? Maybe it's just easier to read when they're smaller sentences. I was like, well, that very well could be it.
That's ultimately what I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to sort of assume the attention span of the audience here a little bit. And I think our reading capacity has gone down, frankly, over time, collectively as a society.
We live in a Twitter society where.
Yeah.
So, well, let's see. We've talked about everything from shoes to MacBook Airs to grammar to everything else. You got any, I don't know, Paul, like what's your favorite paint? Like,
right.
Anything else?
If you're looking for an acrylic versus an oil-based paint, I strongly recommend. No, I don't really have any. Well, actually, that's not true. So I'll just say this since you asked. It's funny, a random, stupid thing. When if you watch these house shows, the hot new color like a year ago was like this dull gray color.
Mm-hmm.
So when we painted our house before we moved last year, we painted it that color, and we just bought the cheapest paint you could buy. We didn't really think much about it. But what we discovered was if you smudge something on, like if you just put your hand on it and you make a smudge, or you take a pencil and you draw a line, and then you try to clean it off, the paint comes off. Mm-hmm. So there are actually different kinds of paints. And so there are some paints that can withstand that, it can actually be cleaned.
Sure.
Strongly recommend buying that paint. Because I think the poor people who bought our house who have a little child have probably had to repaint the entire thing, because it's just worthless. It looked beautiful when we painted it. You know what I mean? But it was, if you have a kid, especially, or just me, like I'm like lumber around the house, like a pinball. I kind of bounce off things as I go up the stairs or whatever.
Yep.
They're going to smudge they're going to smudge it all over the place. It's clumsy.
It happens.
So I guess I do have an opinion about paint for some reason.
Well, when he's not huffing paint, folks. I missed it up. I was going to say, when he was not huffing paint, you can find him at throughout.com. But that wraps it up for today, everybody. And have yourselves a wonderful Monday. And we'll catch you right back here tomorrow on what I suspect might be an interesting show, because they all are.
No.